Welcome to our deep dive into the exciting world of EV sales.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a really interesting CarsGuide article here that suggests that, things might be slowing down a bit.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk recently about, an EV sales slump. But then at the same time, we're hearing all this stuff about record-breaking sales numbers.
Yeah.
So what's the deal? What is the real story here?
Yeah, are we booming or are we going bust?
Exactly.
All right, well, let's dive in and try to figure this out.
Sounds good.
Okay, so maybe we should just start by looking at the global picture.
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
What's going on around the world?
Well, one of the most interesting things, I think, is that in September 2024,
Okay.
a record 1.7 million EVs were sold globally.
Wait, hold on. 1.7 million?
1.7 million.
In a single month?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a slump to me.
No, not at all.
What am I missing?
Yeah, that's definitely not a slump.
Yeah.
That figure is a 14% increase over the previous month. And it's 150,000 more EVs than the previous record, which was set in December 2023.
Okay, so this is a big deal.
Yeah.
All right, so if it's not a slump, what is driving all this crazy growth?
Well, if we zoom out and look at the big picture, there's one country that really sticks out, and that's China.
China.
They are the powerhouse behind this massive surge we're seeing.
China. I know they're big on EVs, but I didn't realize they were dominating the market like this.
It's really quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea of the scale, China alone sold 1.1 million EVs in September.
4.1 million.
Yeah, just in September.
Wow. Isn't that almost as much as Australia sells in an entire year?
You're not far off.
Wow.
It really highlights just how big this shift is in the market.
Yeah.
And, EVs in China now make up 50% of all new car sales.
50%. That's mind-blowing.
It is.
If half the new cars sold in China are electric, that is a sign of some serious change happening.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so we've got China leading the charge. What about the rest of the world? Are they keeping up with this electric revolution?
Well, that's where things get a bit more, nuanced.
Okay.
So while China's market is, booming, we're seeing a slowdown in Europe and the UK.
Interesting.
Year-to-date EV sales there are actually down 4%.
Oh, wow. So it's not all, sunshine and roses everywhere else.
Right, exactly. It's important to remember that the EV market is maturing at different rates in different places.
Well, so this slowdown in Europe,
Yeah.
is this an actual slump or is this something else?
Well, think about it this way. Europe was an early adopter of EVs,
Right.
and their market may be reaching a point of saturation,
Okay.
which basically means that many of the people who really wanted an EV already have one.
So they're ahead of the curve and now things are leveling off.
Exactly.
Kind of like if everyone in your neighborhood already has a lawnmower,
Yeah.
you wouldn't expect lawnmower sales to keep going up and up.
Exactly. That's a great analogy.
I mean,
A real-world example of this is Norway.
okay.
They've been EV champions for years now. Yeah.
And in August, get this, 94.3% of all new car registrations were fully electric.
95%, basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Norway is on its way to a future where there are more EVs than gas cars.
It seems that way.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so we've got China leading the charge. We've got Europe kind of leveling off.
Right.
Where does that leave Australia?
Australia's in a pretty unique position.
Okay.
We have these vast distances and a limited charging infrastructure,
That's true.
which can be a challenge for some EV drivers, especially those who frequently make long journeys.
Yeah, for sure. Range anxiety is a real concern for a lot of people here, especially if you're thinking about a road trip.
Right.
Especially if you're going between cities or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
However, it's important to remember that 73% of Australians live in major cities.
Yeah, that's most people.
Right. And where daily commutes are relatively short, averaging around 33 kilometers.
So you're saying that EVs are actually a very practical option for a lot of Australians?
Especially those who primarily use their vehicles for city driving? Okay, so for most Australians then, range anxiety might not be such a big deal as some people think.
That's right.
Okay.
And here's another interesting development. We're seeing a surge in the popularity of affordable Chinese EV brands in Australia.
Oh, yeah. I've been hearing about that.
Yeah.
What's driving that trend?
Well, for one thing, these Chinese EVs tend to be very competitively priced.
Yeah.
which makes them really attractive to people who are, watching their budget.
Makes sense.
And then secondly, the 2015 Australia-China Free Trade Agreement eliminated new tariffs on Chinese EVs.
Oh, so that makes them even more affordable.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's affordability, favorable trade agreements, and a growing interest in EVs.
Right.
That's putting some pressure on those big car companies.
Absolutely, it is. And what we're seeing is a potential shift in the market with Chinese brands emerging as serious contenders.
This is getting really interesting.
Yeah.
We've got these big global trends all converging here in Australia.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, and it's shaping up to be a pretty interesting battle between these, established brands and these new players coming in.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, this is a good place to stop for now, I think.
All right.
We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into the world of EV sales.
Sounds good.
So before the break, we were talking about how these affordable Chinese EV brands are making a splash here in Australia,
Yeah.
which makes me wonder, is this just a trend? Or is this a sign of like a bigger, power shift happening in the car industry?
I think it's definitely more than just a trend.
Okay.
These Chinese EV makers aren't just competing on price. They're bringing in some cool new technology and features,
Right.
really pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, that's what I think is so cool about this whole EV thing.
Yeah.
It's not just about swapping gas for batteries. It's about rethinking the whole car.
Exactly.
And that's got to be putting pressure on those traditional car companies.
Oh, absolutely. They're having to step up their game.
Yeah.
Big time.
But let's get back to our original question. Is there really an EV sales slump?
All right, let's circle back.
Yeah.
So globally, EV sales are definitely booming,
Yeah.
especially thanks to China.
Uh-huh.
But you're right, in some specific regions, like Europe, growth is slowing down.
Okay, so it sounds like it all depends on how you look at it.
Exactly.
If you just focus on one region, you might miss the bigger picture.
That's right. The term slump might be accurate if you're just looking at Europe.
Okay.
But when you look globally, it's clear that the EV revolution is still gaining momentum.
So it's really important to look at all the data.
Yeah, you got to analyze things carefully and consider all the factors.
Yeah. It's a good reminder to not just believe everything you read in the headlines.
Exactly.
Always got to dig a little deeper.
Always dig deeper.
Okay, so going back to what we were talking about before about the impact on those big car brands,
Yeah,
it's worth noting that some of them are actually adapting pretty well to this whole changing market.
absolutely. A
Yeah.
lot of the big names are investing a lot of money in their own EV lineups.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how they're approaching it.
Yeah.
They're having to redesign things and come up with new strategies.
Right, because they're having to compete in a market that's changing so quickly.
It's like innovate or get left behind.
Exactly. And for consumers, this competition is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. More competition usually means better products and lower prices.
Right.
But are there any downsides to this shift?
Well, there are definitely some challenges.
Okay.
One concern is the potential for job losses as the industry goes through this big transformation.
Right.
The shift to electric vehicles is going to require new skills and expertise.
Yeah.
So it's important to make sure workers in the traditional car industry have support and can adapt to these new jobs.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
It is.
It's easy to get excited about all this new technology.
Yeah,
But we can't forget about the people who might be affected by these changes.
absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about one of the key things driving the affordability of EVs,
Okay.
battery technology.
Right.
The battery is like the heart of an EV, but they've always been really expensive.
They have been, historically.
So are there any advancements happening in that area?
Absolutely. Battery technology is constantly improving.
Right.
And as a result, battery prices are coming down steadily.
So that's a major reason why EVs are becoming more affordable.
Exactly. It's making them accessible to more and more people.
That's great news for people who couldn't afford an EV before.
Exactly. And there's even more exciting stuff on the horizon.
Like what?
Well, researchers are working on next-generation batteries,
Okay.
including things like solid-state batteries, which sounds super futuristic.
Yeah, solid-state batteries.
Yeah.
That sounds like science fiction.
I know, right?
Are those even close to being a reality?
Not quite yet,
Okay.
but they're getting closer.
Okay.
Several companies are making progress.
Wow.
It's definitely a technology to keep an eye on.
Okay, so if I'm getting this right, the EV market isn't just about swapping out gas cars for electric ones.
Right.
It's about a whole new system
Yeah, a whole ecosystem.
of innovation and new batteries and infrastructure and manufacturing processes.
It's a multifaceted revolution.
Yeah, with implications for just about everything.
Yeah, it really is.
This brings us to another important part of the EV revolution: environmental impact. EVs themselves don't produce any tailpipe emissions,
That's right.
which is great for air quality.
Absolutely.
But what about the impact of actually making them, especially the batteries?
Yeah, that's an important consideration.
Yeah.
The production of EV batteries does have an environmental footprint,
Okay.
especially when it comes to mining the materials.
So it's not a perfect solution.
No, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Okay.
And the industry is working hard to make the whole process more sustainable.
In what ways?
Well, they're looking at how they source the materials and the whole manufacturing process.
So it's good to know that they're thinking about that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But it's not just about the cars themselves, is it?
Right.
We also need to think about where the electricity to charge them comes from.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The environmental benefit of EVs really depends on how clean that electricity is.
So if you're charging your EV with electricity that's made from burning coal, it's not as good as if you're using solar or wind power.
Exactly.
That-
The switch to electric cars needs to happen at the same time as a switch to cleaner energy sources.
It's all connected.
Yeah, it's like a chain reaction.
Cleaner energy means cleaner transportation, which is good for everyone.
Absolutely.
Okay, so speaking of sustainability,
Yeah.
what happens to all those EV batteries when they're done?
Yeah.
Do they just end up in a landfill?
No, definitely not.
Okay, good.
There's a lot of research and development going on around recycling and repurposing those batteries.
Okay,
The goal is to minimize waste and recover those valuable materials.
so they're not just trash once they're done powering a car.
Nope, not at all.
Huh.
There are people working on creating what they call a circular economy for EV batteries,
Okay,
so they can have a second life after being used in cars.
that's fantastic.
It is.
It sounds like this whole EV revolution is pushing us toward a more sustainable future in a lot of ways.
It really is, and that's what makes it such an exciting time to be following this industry.
Yeah.
We're seeing this convergence of new technology, environmental awareness, and consumer demand,
Yeah.
all pushing us toward a cleaner and more electric future.
Yeah. It feels like we're right on the edge of a really big change.
It does.
Not just in the car industry, but like in society as a whole.
Absolutely.
But as with any big change, there are going to be challenges and things we don't know for sure.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll delve into some of the key questions and challenges facing the EV market and discuss what the future might hold.
Okay. So we're back for the final part of our EV sales deep dive.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground so far, from the global boom to the challenges and opportunities.
Yep, for sure.
Now let's talk about what's next. What does the future hold for EVs?
Okay.
And what does all this mean for, people here in Australia?
Yeah. Well, the future of EVs is full of possibilities, but it's also got its fair share of challenges.
Okay, so what are some of the biggest hurdles we got to get over to make this whole electric dream a reality?
I think one of the most pressing ones, and we talked about this a little bit before, is infrastructure.
Okay.
And specifically, the availability of charging stations.
Right. Range anxiety is a real concern, especially in a big country like Australia.
Yeah.
People need to be able to charge their cars easily, whether they're driving to work or going on a road trip.
Exactly. And it's not just about how many chargers there are.
Okay.
We need faster charging technology and a better network of charging stations.
Okay.
Imagine being able to fully charge your EV in the time it takes to get a coffee.
That would be amazing.
Right. That's the kind of convenience we need to be aiming for.
So it's like we're building a whole new system for these electric vehicles.
Exactly. It's a whole new ecosystem, and it's going to require everyone to work together.
Okay.
Governments, car makers, energy companies, tech companies.
It's a big job.
It is a complex undertaking, but it's essential if we want people to really embrace EVs.
Yeah. The payoff could be huge, though.
Oh, absolutely.
What else is coming up that we should be thinking about?
Well, consumer education is really important.
Okay.
There are still a lot of myths and misconceptions about EVs.
Like what kind of things?
Oh, stuff about their range and how long it takes to charge them, to their safety and how well they perform.
Like anything new, there's always a learning curve.
Exactly. The more people know about EVs, the more likely they are to consider buying one.
Right.
So we need to debunk those myths and give people good information.
Yeah.
So they can decide if an EV is right for them.
Yeah, knowledge is power,
Yeah.
right? Especially when you're making decisions that affect the planet.
Absolutely.
Speaking of that, we've talked about how EVs are good for the environment.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the impact on jobs and the economy?
Right.
As the car industry shifts to EVs, won't that mean fewer jobs in the traditional car industry?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. The shift to EVs is going to change the job market for sure.
Okay.
Some jobs will be lost, but new ones will be created.
Okay.
It's important that we invest in training programs so that people who work in the traditional car industry
Yeah.
can learn the new skills they need to work in the EV industry.
So it's about making sure that everyone benefits from this transition.
Yeah,
not
Exactly.
just the people who can afford the newest tech.
Right. And while there will be some bumps along the way,
Uh-huh.
the rise of EVs also creates incredible opportunities for innovation and economic growth.
Okay, so it's not all bad news.
No, not at all. It's about building a better future for everyone.
So what kind of opportunities are we talking about?
Well, think about the advancements in battery technology,
Okay.
self-driving cars, and all the new connected car services.
Yeah.
These are all areas where we're seeing amazing progress. And it's all being driven by the EV revolution.
It's like the EV is becoming more than just a car.
Right.
It's a platform for all this new technology.
Yeah, it's a symbol of progress.
Driving change.
Exactly. And that's what makes this such an exciting time to be watching all this unfold.
Yeah, for sure.
We're not just talking about the evolution of cars, we're talking about a change to our entire transportation system
Wow.
and maybe even society as a whole.
Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming to think about all the ways this could affect things.
It is.
So what can we do? What can our listeners do to be a part of this electric future?
Well, I think the first step is to just stay informed.
Okay.
Keep learning about EVs, look at the different options, and think about how they might fit into your life.
Yeah, because the more you know, the better decisions you can make.
Exactly, for yourself and for the planet.
And if you're thinking about getting a new car,
Yeah.
don't rule out an EV.
Give them a test drive.
Yeah.
Compare the costs and see if it's right for you.
Okay.
You might be surprised by how far EVs have come.
It's like taking a step into the future.
It really is.
So it sounds like the future is electric, but it's not a sure thing.
No, it's not a done deal.
We still have choices to make.
The future is what we make it.
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
We can shape the future of transportation.
Yeah,
And by doing that, we can shape the future of the planet.
absolutely.
So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep learning and thinking about this electric revolution.
Yeah.
The future is in our hands, and it's time to electrify it.
Well said. And thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of EV sales.
Until next time, keep those wheels turning, and hey, maybe consider plugging them in.